With 8 games behind them, the 6-2 Ravens have 9 more left, and preparations are already underway on the field for Sunday's meeting against Seattle. A huge chunk of the Ravens' travel schedule is done, with 2 trips still set out west. While it's never focused past the current week, the Ravens can't help but know how important the next 3 games are. All at home, and 3 of those games will be in 11 days' time come Sunday.
It really is. I mean, it's something that we've, long term. Our long term is probably 3 weeks. Our short term is Sunday, even Thursday. But that's the kind of the bucket right in front of us right now. Do as well as we can over that stretch, and we're thinking a lot about that.
I'm ready to sleep in my bed at night and just wake up in Baltimore rather than hopping on a plane and traveling coast to coast like that. So I am excited to be back home.
I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to it. We're not traveling. We're staying home, grounded. I'm enjoying it.
As far as Ravens practice attendance today, they were without 6 players, 5 of those starters, one of them running back Gus Edwards. But he did speak to us after in the locker room from practice today and said he is fine following Sunday's 3-touchdown performance against Arizona. They did get safety Marcus Williams back on the practice field. He has been out for 2 games with a hamstring. When asked if he's going to play on Sunday, he said, "You'll have to wait and see." Reporting in Owings Mills, I'm Morgan Adsit for Sports Unlimited.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 6 o'clock, an historic vote happening in just a few hours. A look at the efforts to expel one controversial New York congressman. And the Federal Reserve announces it's keeping interest rates unchanged, but says a hike is possible before the end of the year. We'll have a report from D.C.
Millions of dollars in state money approved for Safe Streets. Fox 45 News questioning Mayor Scott about the organization following last week's FBI raid. Neighbors near Hampden say young people were shooting at each other, but police say their reports are unfounded. Fox 45 presses police for answers for the community. And an historic vote happening tonight to expel one lawmaker from Congress. The latest on the efforts to remove New York Congressman George Santos.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
The mayor is standing right in the midst of this. As far as I'm concerned, Muncie, the mayor, Johns Hopkins, Catholic Charities, Life Bridge, all need to be checked out.
Well, calls for accountability continue as more money is approved for Safe Streets today. Baltimore's Board of Estimates signed off on $3.6 million in state money for the organization. Now it comes as the FBI continues to investigate the city's flagship gun violence prevention program. Mayor Scott is defending the city's action.
The actions of a few individuals, however, does not negate the critical work that violence interrupters do in our city on a daily basis. When we were under a federal investigation for BPD, we were still taking grants from the state for BPD.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. Thank you so much for staying with us. While the mayor says the funding will help the program continue, there are several unanswered questions about what's next for Safe Streets amid the federal investigation. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pressed the mayor today. She has that story.
The mayor maintains that the actions of some should not negate what's happening at Safe Streets locations across Baltimore, but there still seems to be a lack of transparency about what's going on within the program, even as the mayor says he agrees there should be an audit of the mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The FBI raid at the Safe Streets site in Bel Air Edison remains a major black cloud over leaders inside City Hall.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I think everyone is in and settled.
Mayor Brandon Scott taking questions in person for the first time since the news broke. The FBI raiding 15 locations, 3 Safe Streets employees suspended. The location is inactive and at least one person facing state-level charges.
We work with our federal partners every day and will continue to do so throughout this investigation.
Mayor Scott says he spoke with Comptroller Bill Henry about moving forward with an audit of MONSE, the city agency that oversees the implementation of Safe Streets.
This is about looking and making sure that money and things are being spent the right way, and we welcome that.
But that will take time and requires voters to approve a charter amendment to ensure MONSE stays on the list of routine audits. Can't you just direct MONSE to be transparent and hand over the information for the public so they can see what's going on with their tax dollars right now?
Well, I think that, Mackenzie, the voters of Baltimore voted to have audits, and they voted to have them in this way. And I can't direct the Department of Audits to do that because they don't work for me. We have
But you can tell MONSE to do it.
We've talked to the comptroller, who is in charge of doing audits for the city, and he and I agree that it should be done, and we're going to do it the way that the voters, the residents of Baltimore, said it should be done by the comptroller.
When the audit will be complete is not clear, but what is clear, the mayor's apparent unwavering support of Safe Streets, one that's central to his crime-fighting strategy. Even when the FBI investigate gang affiliations with Safe Streets in 2018, former Safe Streets worker Ricky Evans admitting to storing guns and drugs here at the location that used to be on Monument Street in East Baltimore. The feds say Evans admitted to using the location as a BGF gang meeting location. Wednesday, we questioned the mayor about the apparent lack of oversight measures in place to prevent a similar situation from unfolding again. Why should the public trust that this program is functional now?
Well, I think that we also have a separately outside of city government that says the program works. We've said everything that we're going to say about the investigation that should be directed to the FBI.
With the mayor saying the current probe is just about the actions of a few, there are still unanswered questions about the hiring process. The nonprofits say MONSE is part of the screening panel. MONSE says hiring is done by the nonprofits. So who does make the final say in the hiring process? And given that what we're seeing happen now the second time with an FBI raid at Safe Streets sites, will anything change when it comes to that screening process for employees?
There will be changes, and we'll send you directly the information in writing how those decisions are made. Thank you.
So who makes the final say of the hiring? The mayor leaving the news conference without providing a clear answer, and that information has yet to come from his office. When we were leaving City Hall, we saw several key stakeholders involved in the operations of the Safe Streets program walking into the mayor's office. I followed up with his team asking what that meeting was about, but we never heard back. Meanwhile, it's unclear when the Safe Streets location in Bel Air Edison will reopen. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Well, Fox 45 News has sent more than 30 questions to various organizations in the past few days, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. You can read all of our questions and find any answers we get on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Now, yesterday we asked you, should Safe Streets be halted pending an investigation or audit of the program? 96% of those who voted said yes. And that brings us to our question of the day. Do you trust Brandon Scott to get to the bottom of what's going on with Safe Streets? So far, 97% of those who voted say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to make your voice heard.
Shots fired. 2 men armed with guns, both wearing masks, have just shot off their guns at a man in a black car, and then they drove off.
Well, despite hearing from neighbors and 911 dispatch reporting weapons being fired in the middle of the day near Hamden, BPD says reports of a shooting in North Baltimore's Medfield community yesterday are unfounded, and it's unclear if any further investigation will take place. Fox 45's Amy Simpson pressed police for answers today, and she has this story.
Again today, some of those damaged cars still visible along Buena Vista Avenue. This, as we're learning, a neighbor reportedly has dash cam footage of what unfolded here yesterday, but he's declining to share it, telling us he fears retaliation. Around 12:30 yesterday afternoon,
I have discharge of arms, 4125 Buena Vista.
Scanner traffic from the Baltimore Police Northern District.
Shots fired. 2 men armed with guns, both wearing masks, have just shot off their guns at a man in a black car, and then they drove off.
Dispatch appearing to relay multiple 911 reports to responding officers.
Third call, armed person, Buena Vista and Weldon. Caller reporting 2 males just ran into a male driving a sedan, jumped out on him with guns. The guy backed up and hit about 45 cars and sped off.
And this is the scene our Fox 45 news crew arrived to see. A police perimeter, multiple BPD cars, and a city schools police vehicle. At least 3 parked cars smashed and sideswiped. All evidence of the chaos that unfolded in broad daylight.
One was in burst and one was coming like towards him, you know what I mean? And he was just like this, pow, 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 letting loose inside the car. And then he, boom, plowed this and then went up that street, you know what I mean?
This neighbor describing what he says he witnessed.
It's crazy. These juveniles are out of control. Something's got to be done. They were young, really young kids. I could tell they were young.
Meanwhile, what appears to be the voice of an officer on scene relays an update back to dispatch.
I'm in the 4100 block of Buena Vista. Nobody's hurt. Nobody's hit right now.
Less than a minute later,
both vehicles that were involved in the discharging are not on scene.
And at one point, someone over dispatch even puts units and hospitals on alert.
To add all units with hospitals on your post, please check scene in reference to confirmed discharging 4100 block of Buena Vista in the northern.
But despite this dispatch chatter and neighbors reporting hearing and seeing guns in this community, Baltimore police tell Fox 45 News reports of a shooting here were unfounded and therefore no incident report was made. But with very real damage and a neighborhood looking for answers and accountability. Today we're pressing BPD, asking what suspects they're looking for and what further investigation is underway. One neighbor also sharing a police report number showing his damaged vehicle was classified as a hit and run. Our questions to BPD about any suspects or any further investigation, so far they've gone unanswered. Meanwhile, the department telling us that man's police report has not yet been completed. In North Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Fox 45 is following a developing story. The House of Representatives is expected to hold a vote tonight on whether or not to expel New York Congressman George Santos. Now, this comes just days after the 35-year-old pled not guilty to a 23-count federal indictment accusing him of several crimes, including money laundering. The resolution to expel Santos will need the support of at least 2/3 of the House lawmakers. That means nearly 80 Republicans, and along with all Democrats, would need to vote to expel him. In a letter today, 5 New York Republicans urged their colleagues to vote in favor of the resolution, calling it a, quote, moral issue. Now, if expelled, however, Santos would become the first congressman since the Civil War to be removed from office without a criminal conviction. Mary?
Kai, thank you. Day 2 of jury selection in the federal trial of former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby is now over. The jury has not yet been finalized, so jury selection will continue tomorrow. Opening statements were scheduled to start tomorrow morning. That's still possible depending on when jury selection wraps up. Fox 45 News spoke with one legal expert who says it is not uncommon for the process to take some time.
It's really, although not discussed, it's not at all uncommon for voir dire to take longer than the case itself. In Baltimore City, if we have a gang case or we have a case that has been highly publicized, oftentimes you could take you 2 to 3 days or 4 days in a co-defendant trial or a high publicity one to pick a jury when the case itself only takes 2 days of witness testimony. So not terribly surprising, but it's not something the public is often aware of.
Marilyn Mosby is facing 4 federal charges. This trial is focusing on 2 of those charges, both of perjury. We'll stay with Fox 45 News. We'll have complete coverage of the Mosby case each day. Be sure to download the Fox 45 News app. Turn on notifications to get breaking developments even when we're not on air.
High interest rates are here to stay, at least until inflation gets back to normal levels. I'm Atra El-Nashar with the details of the Federal Reserve's latest move.
And temperatures falling down into the low to mid 30s, a lot of areas last night. We're going to beat that tonight. The record standing from the 1970s, 29, and it could be in jeopardy. I'm going to let you know how cold you're going to get and when it finally warms up. My Weather Authority forecast.
Well, today, the Federal Reserve announced it will keep interest rates where they are, but says it will remain open to the possibility of one more increase before the end of the year. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar joins us live from Capitol Hill tonight with more on this decision and its effects. Good evening, Atra.
Hey, good evening, Mary. This decision is coming from a place of confidence from the Federal Reserve, really on 2 fronts. Chair Jerome Powell said today that it is clear the process to getting inflation down to a normal level has a long way to go. But also, as painful as these high interest rates are, they believe the economy can take it. In fact, the Fed announced it doubled down. Well, Jerome Powell, I guess, let it leak. We weren't supposed to learn this for another couple weeks, that the Fed in their meeting minutes will reveal that they are doubling down on their outlook that there will not be a recession. And that's in large part to the fact that there's a very strong labor market. As Wall Street expected, for the second time in a row, Federal Reserve members voted to hold interest rates where they are.
Good afternoon, everyone.
The cost of borrowing money has skyrocketed since the Fed started raising rates in March of last year. Economist Rachel Saderberg.
Interest rates are a blunt instrument, right? They're not a scalpel. And in that sense, they have to take a very broad view of what interest rates are going to affect, right? And what they're trying to do is tamper down spending.
For the most part, that hasn't happened yet. The Fed says it will stop raising rates when inflation is on a sustainable path to 2%. The measure they pay most attention to shows inflation's currently at 3.7%. High interest rates also impacting government debt. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, interest is now the fourth largest expense in the federal budget behind Social Security, Medicare, and defense. Billionaire Stanley Druckenmiller criticizing Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen for not securing low pandemic-era rates on long-term debt, calling it the biggest blunder in the history of the department. He later said former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin in the Trump administration was also at fault. Saderberg says while hindsight is 20/20, the Treasury was just one part of the equation. Congress and the Fed's policies also brought us to this moment.
It's all working together in one bigger picture. And so it's hard to say in a vacuum what one difference would have done.
The Fed also processing a new batch of jobs data. A Labor Department report shows September ended with 9.6 million open jobs. And an ADP private payroll report shows 113,000 jobs were added in October, with the education and healthcare sector coming in as the top job creator. That ADP report also showed pay growth slowed to 5.7% year over year. Of course, that's not good news for workers, but in time, economists believe that could help slow inflation.
And Atra, we know another interest rate hike is possible before the end of the year. Any hint from the Fed about which way that they're leaning?
Well, Chair Powell was very clear about the fact that they have not made a decision about their December meeting. They don't want investors to get ahead of themselves. But he did give us basically the tea leaves that might be in place if that would precede another interest rate hike. And those are if the tightness in the labor market is no longer loosening. And then also if we're continuing to see above potential economic growth. Think the GDP reading we just got that showed almost 5% growth in the third quarter because consumers are spending. Now, heading into the holidays, that might not change. Jerome Powell emphasized that they're going to get more inflation, jobs, and GDP data before they meet next when we find out that next decision on December 13th.
Okay, we'll be watching Atra El-Nishar live on Capitol Hill for us tonight. Thank you.
All right, taking a look outside. The next weather maker really is going to be fair weather high pressure out of Canada. What does that mean for you? It means this. It means some cold weather. It also means dry weather for the next several days. Freeze warnings in effect for the entire area. That's going to last us overnight through tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So plants, pets, people all have to be protected. Outdoor pipes and plumbing also have to be wrapped up or drained, like potentially hose bibs, hoses, that type of thing, or you could end up with some problems by tomorrow morning. So we fall down well into the 20s, some neighborhoods. Right now it's 45 already after a high only at 50. Should be at about 63 on average for a high this time of year. Nowhere near it. Winds out of the west-northwest at 13 as those die down overnight with the clear skies. You see there on the Toyota East Inner Harbor Skycam. Well, we're also going to be seeing the temperatures plummet down. 45 in Baltimore right now. By the way, the record for tonight, I was checking some of the data. It's 29 from back in 1976. We could make a run at that. 43 at Cockeysville right now. We're at 44 Bel Air. Temperatures in the 40s as well at Westminster. We're not too far away around Hampstead, Manchester. Had some snow flurries and light snow showers this morning. Wind chills statewide in the 30s and low 40s. Look at those wind chills in the 20s. As you head way out there toward Oakland, Deep Creek Lake, where they've had up to a couple inches of snow today. The cold air continues to feed in, and even a few snow showers and flurries still up into PA. Again, those have dried out around here, but you can see them streaming off the Great Lakes. That means the winds coming in out of the cold north and northwest. That will continue into tonight and next couple of days. In fact, sunshine, cold starts, and very unseasonably cool finishes are on the way. So overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning, you see a lot of those 20s to near 30. So You're going to probably have to do some scraping in the morning and get the remote starter going. And by tomorrow afternoon, by about, say, 3 to 4 o'clock, as the kids are getting off of school, still chilly. 30. Cold tonight, clear skies, frost freeze conditions, 52 for tomorrow. That's the best we do. Sunshine, continued chilly. I'm going to let you know when we finally do warm up. That's coming up in my exclusive 10-day forecast.
7 overdoses in 3 weeks at one Northern Virginia high school. The similarities in the cases and why parents were just told about them yesterday. In tonight's assignment, America, students at one Northern Virginia high school have been connected to at least 8 drug-related overdoses, with 7 of those happening in just the last 3 weeks. Megan Clark from our Sinclair sister station in D.C. has the story.
In the last 21 days, 4 students have overdosed here inside Parkview High School. 3 students needed Narcan. 2 of those needed CPR. All cases involving the potentially deadly drug, fentanyl.
It's acute. Having that many in one particular high school really is a cause for concern.
For the past 3 weeks, the school had not sent out a notice to parents until today, when this email was sent to all families at the school. It does not mention the number of overdoses, but does say we are seeing students ingesting drugs prior to school and suffering the effects while in school. We are hearing reports of young people outside of school experiencing medical emergencies.
This problem, I thought, was pretty serious in one particular location, and it was really critical for us to make sure that people knew.
Loudoun County Sheriff Mike Chapman telling 7 News he spoke with the superintendent last week, and Friday investigators met with school leaders. But it's unclear why the school waited until today to send out a notice to parents.
If you had 18 countywide and you had 8 that are associated with one school in just a few weeks, that's a problem. I mean, we have the problem countywide, but it's important that if you have an acute problem in a particular area, that people know about it.
According to the latest numbers from Virginia's Department of Health, opioid deaths are up nearly 30%. And with the victims becoming younger and younger, Chapman says sharing the specifics of these incidents is critical.
We need to get to the sources of supply